All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I have with me Catherine and my co-star, of course, Levi. But I just wanted to have Catherine on today because I just thought it's a good idea to just kind of get to know you a little better. Because, we've created a community online here, and I just really like to hear other people's story because they're all so different. And, yours is probably completely different to Bryce and mine. I got to be honest, like, you are so educated, it seems like. And I have a hard time sometimes communicating with educated people. Levi, you want the nana?
Yummy banana.
You want some? Can you just share some with Catherine? Share? No.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I was a little intimidated the first time I talked to you because I was like, oh my gosh, just because I am not the best communicator sometimes, but you definitely are. That's why I watched you, because I always like to watch people that I aspire to be like. And with you, you're just an amazing communicator. So I just thought I'd add that in. But what I wanted to ask first is just kind of get a little bit of your background. So I heard that you're a twin, which is so cool. I think I heard that on a show recently with, maybe it was Janine. But I was just kind of wondering, like, what was your family life growing up?
Sure. First of all, I just want to say that's really, really kind introduction, and hello to all your listeners. And I just want to really commend you, because for me, having got grown-up children now, you're so inspirational, your mothering skills, just getting on and doing this, and the way you interact with Levi and having him there and carrying on. When I know I'm off target, but I will get back to your question. But when I had my children sort of 20 years ago now, my daughter's just turned 20. I had to think about that. My son's just turned 22. And when I had children, of course, now we can see the brainwashing that went on about women and work and things like this. And it was a really hard balance to have. And, you certainly couldn't involve your children in your work and things like this. It was completely frowned upon. You had your professional life and your home life, and never the two would mix. And I just love seeing now the way mothers are just incorporating their children into their lives. And it pulls on my heartstrings a bit, really, because I wish I'd had the confidence to do that as a mum, but I'm not going to look back. I've got completely amazing children, and I'll be a different grandma, and I'll do things differently when I'm a grandma, and I won't mind the noise in the background. But if I'd have been on a work meeting and had children in the background, it would have been a massive no-no. So it's just so lovely to see how things are changing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I am a twin, and it's really weird because I'm completely different to my twin. We're different physically, we're very different personalities, and we have been since the day we were born. We always used to joke that one of us was swapped at birth, but actually we've both got traits of our parents, so I don't think that was true. I think we did really belong there, but we're almost as different as you could. So at school, I was always the shortest in the class, and she was always the tallest. So everyone thought she was about 3 years older than me. I had an elder sister as well. She was blonde, I was dark. We were good at completely different sports, very different academically. But back in those days, you were always known as the twins, and you were lumped together. So growing up, it was really hard to be seen as an individual from both our perspectives, because here we were, completely different personalities, interests, beings. And yet everyone at school and family members, it was always the twins, apart from because she was blonde and she was known as the pretty one and I was known as the clever one. So, you were labelled very early on, and we always got identical presents, and hers was pink and mine were blue because I was more boyish than her. So I can laugh about it now, but it was difficult for both of us growing up because, everyone, when you're a child and you're going through different stages and everything, quite often you want what you don't have, and we were such opposite ends of the screen. It was really frustrating to be lumped together all the time. But yeah, in terms of sort of growing up, it was such different times to now. It's almost weird because so many of the people that I'm friendly with now are quite a lot younger than me. And, you know, when I grew up, we had 3 programs on TV. You were allowed to watch TV very little. You had no mobile phones, no computers, no internet. Every one of my generation was very fit. You know, we walked everywhere, we ran everywhere, you were outside all the time. It was a just completely different world to what we're living in now. And it's funny when you look back on it. I mean, I went right the way through university. At university, there was internet, but no one had mobile phones. No one had their own laptop. You handwrote everything. You went to the library for everything. And so the world has changed beyond all recognition. And I had like everyone, you know, childhood is a mixture. I was lucky enough to grow up with a lot of animals around me. I really liked school because I love learning. So it's been quite funny, Liz, because in all this sort of movement that we've been talking about now, education has got a real slating. But I had a wonderful time with education. I never believed everything I was taught at all. And I didn't ever think I needed to. I found exams really easy, but I always knew there were means to an end. But there's never been a month of my life where I haven't been continually studying, because a lot of the time, not formal education on things that I find interesting. So I very much, my dad was really, really intelligent, and he would have loved the opportunities I've had to go off to university, to have a good education. So I suppose I grew up very grateful for my education, and very grateful of the opportunities that I had. And I see that missing a lot now. I see that there's a lot of focus on, you know, that the schools should teach everything. The schools, I grew up with a generation where the parents didn't expect the schools to teach their children everything. The schools had a place, but society and the family had a place. And believe you me, you know, you were lucky to have a good education. If you went to quite a good school, you were lucky to have that, and you were expected to appreciate it and make the most of whatever opportunity you got given. And I'm really grateful for that, because I grew up with really strong moral fibre of a family who, you know, my parents were both born during the Second World War in London. And I might be stop me if I'm going too far off target, but, you know, in my childhood, I was so lucky to have parents that didn't take anything for granted. They installed real work ethic in us. They didn't mollycoddle us at all. You know, now people sit down and they play with their children and they do their homework for them and they get involved in every aspect of their life. And I grew up in a generation where your parents didn't get involved in your life at all, you know. So your education, your homework, you do it. And if you don't do it, if you get in trouble with the teacher, that's your fault, and you take the consequences and the punishment. You know, none of this, I have to put Coco down, because much as I love her on my desk, the problem
is beautiful.
They're so beautiful. I've got Coco, Idris, Indian Lola, Pumpkin, but
love the names.
When we grew up, I grew up, my childhood was all about taking responsibility for yourself, all about, you know, you worked hard, you had a good, as I said, all my family had a very good moral compass. They worked hard, they got on with life. They were grateful because they'd grown up. As I said, they were born in the Second World War, in the blitzing of London. They had rations all their childhood. They didn't have the opportunity to, my dad had to leave school really early because he had to help support his family. Never moaned about any of it. So, you know, when I hear people saying that this is the most difficult time we've grown up in, this is the most difficult times of humans' life, I'm afraid, I've said it numerous times, I completely disagree. I think we've got a load of spoiled rats now that have no idea what real, and I upset a lot of people, you know how blunt I am, but, you know, I don't think most people who are born now have any idea what real hardship is. And of course, there's exceptions to the rules. And I think that we've lost sight of all the opportunities we've got available to us, and actually that it's our responsibility as individuals to either grasp those opportunities with both hands or not.
Yeah, I agree. I even said I'm a little more blunt on my TikTok channel than YouTube. But I said the same thing. I was like, I don't think you guys realize, like, yeah, you might be tired of what's going on, but like, we have it so good. Like, if this is a WAR, we have it so good. Like, you still have a relatively normal life right now.
Exactly.
Like, relatively normal. Yeah, there's inconveniences, but what is inconvenience compared to like literally like fleeing for your life? Come on.
Yeah.
You know.
So I remember my grandma saying to me, you know, she had my mum. My mum was younger than my dad. So my dad was born at the start of the war, my mum at the end of the war. And they both were in inner city London. They didn't evacuate because their parents had businesses there. And, you know, my dad used to be air raid shelters every day. And then the parents were just so grateful if they found their children at the end of the day. You know, numerous members of my mum's family were bombed. My grandma, I can remember her saying, you know, they couldn't use the lights at night. They could, you know, they didn't have central heating, air raid shelters every day. Numerous members of their family were bombed and killed. And she said, you know, you've got 2 young children in that, and you've no idea where your next meal is coming from. Most of the men aren't there. And you know, Liz, I never heard them throughout their whole life. They never moaned about it. Never moaned about it.
I even think of my husband. He's from a third world country and he's fled war before, you know, and he like never acts like it's a huge deal. Like over here, especially in the US, it would be like so dramatic. And he just kind of talks about it like it's everyday life. And I'm like, wow, how privileged am I? And, you know, his family is all over there. Like he has 9 brothers and sisters, and then his parents, and they're all still over there. And you never hear them asking for money, like nothing. Like we give when we can, but they're just super grateful for the little bit that they have. And they do what they can to make it through the day pretty much. So it's really nice to have that side of the spectrum, like living with that side of the spectrum, and raising our kid, you know, with two different, completely different worldviews. But yeah, so I was wondering, you said you've always had this love for animals. So like I've had a huge love for animals, but because I married the man I married, we don't have an animal right now, and it kills me to the core. But I was just, you know, when did that really like start for you? I mean, I know that you said you always loved them, but like, when did you decide that that was going to be the direction of your life?
Yeah, I mean, both my parents were real animal lovers, but growing up in inner city London, they couldn't really have many animals. So my mum was always coming back with kittens and things and pretending she'd found them on the street when really she hadn't. She'd saved up her pocket money to go and get them. But I think her mum always saw through it. But when I was born, to be quite honest, my mum would have been very happy not to have had any human children, but my dad wanted children. So my mum, when we were growing up, she was always she had guinea pigs. So if you didn't know where my mum was, she was in with the guinea pigs, and she had a lovely German Shepherd job as well. And then we had a Labrador. So I never have had a time in my life when I haven't had animals. And my mother and father, my father hadn't grown up with animals, but my father was just kind to everyone and everything. You know, he was just one of those really genuinely honest, outstanding people who really didn't have a bad bone in his body, quite honestly. I might not have been the best communicator. I might not have wanted to be married to him, but as a dad, he was fantastic. And so I grew up with animals as a normal part of my life. And then we deliberately moved somewhere. My mum had a cat, and the cat had got run over on the road, and she was completely devastated by it. So I can remember how excited we were when as a family, we moved more into the countryside out of the town so that we could get a cat and be safer for the cat. So that's how I've lived my life. You know, for me, even as an adult, I've chosen my houses about where it's best for the animals, and that's been where we've settled. And then when I was 14, like my mother was mad on horses, but could never had a horse. They could never afford it. They lived in London. She used to go and volunteer at riding stables. But when I was 14, all I'd done my whole childhood is go on about having a horse. And so my parents bought me a horse, and it was the most insuitable horse ever. She was a complete nutter, used to nearly kill me every time, but I didn't care. I loved her, did anything. But again, what was brilliant, Liz, is I had to look after her myself. Now, in those days, there's no internet, so you can't Google what to feed a horse, how to look after a horse or anything. So you learn. So I researched, I went and spoke to people, you do learn the hard way, you make mistakes and then you correct it, sort of thing. But again, my parents always, if we had an animal and it was ours, we always looked after it. So when I was a child and I got my horse at the age of 14, my dad had to get up at 5:30 in the morning and drive me to do it. But then he sat in the car whilst I mucked it out, fed her, turned her out, poo-pooed the field and everything. They didn't do it for you, which I never wanted them to. But now you see so many parents, the amount of people I say, oh, I got them a dog, but they don't walk it anymore. Well, ours were like, no.
Yeah.
And so, and then when I went off to university, I had to put my horse out on loan. I was very lucky. She lived to a very old age. And then I went traveling and I found someone else to have on loan, and my dad kept an eye on her. And then as soon as I then came back and settled down and we got a house, then the first thing I did was get some cats. And then grew from there, because initially when I was working full job, in a normal job, I couldn't have a dog because it wouldn't have been fair. But I have my horse, which I used to get up at 5 o'clock every morning, however late I've been out the night before, do my horse before and after work, because she lived to well into her 30s. And with all my animals, they're all rescues, so I never really know how old any of them are. It's a guess. So I've never been without animals, but I wasn't working with animals initially, because I did study biology at university, which I absolutely loved. Again, you can see the good or bad in any education system and things, but I just honestly think it's down to the individual.
So true.
I never felt
like,
brainwashed.
You can, everything's what you make it. I was never a education type of person because I just didn't like what they were making me study. But now that I'm an adult and I can study what I want, I'm all about learning new things. But gearing it towards my interests.
Exactly.
He's making a mess over there.
Oh, bless him. Yeah.
It's the only thing that'll really keep him quiet, so I'm just letting him do it. But so what you do now with the animals, I know it's very geared towards health and keeping them healthy and giving them proper diets and stuff. So I'm sure biology played a role in that. But I know you're connected to the Roots company that you
that's a very recent thing. I've done loads of different careers, Liz. I didn't always work with animals. So when I left university, there were very few jobs for biologists. You either worked out studying wildlife in the wild, which is what I really wanted to do, but I had my old horse to look after and I wasn't going to abandon her. So I couldn't just disappear off to the jungle for 6 months at a time because I didn't have anyone to look after my horse, who was in her 30s by that stage. So I needed to take care of her. And on the other side of things you went into was the pharmaceutical side of things, which all my friends went into, and there was no way I was going, even from a very early stage, I knew no way was I going into that sort of side of the industry. So I went and got a job. I did environmental management. I've had loads of different careers. So I was quite unusual for my age group, because when I left university, you were expected to go and work for a big company, work your way up, get a good pension. And I was just never interested in doing that. So I would try out a job, do it for a few years, get what I liked out about it, and then move on. And I've always found it very difficult. So I've done completely different careers. I've worked in environmental management. I've worked for telecoms companies, running a factory for Nokia, which I knew nothing about, didn't even know what a base station was when I got the job. I've done lots of different project management roles. I've done water quality stuff. I've worked for the public health sector, managing stuff there, which was an absolute eye-opener to show me what was going on. And there seemed to be no link between them at all. But then as soon as the scandemic hit, I could see the link, because I was thinking, well, I know about EMF, I know about water pollution, I know about the food pollution, I know about how corrupt the health services, I know, and then suddenly it was like ping, 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 everyone fitted together. But it was really when I had my children, I thought, I never didn't like my jobs, Liz, because I very much, if I didn't like it, I'd just leave and get another one. But I just thought, I just don't want to be working for someone else. My passion is working for animals. By that stage, holistic health was becoming more acceptable. So then whilst I was working full time, I trained to be an equine iridologist, which is looking to the eyes of horses to diagnose health issues.
That's so cool.
And that included a lot of herbal medicine. And so I got into doing that, and I set up that business alongside working full time. And at this stage, I still had 2 very young children as well. And then I gradually, then I did more training in herbal medicine and something called zoopharmacognosy, animal self-medicating, and then animal communication and light therapy and all different elms to my bow, and quite a lot of human holistic health as well, because the human research is a lot ahead of the animal research. So quite often, if you want to work with animals, you have to study the human stuff first and extrapolate it onto the different species. And then working really, really hard, because I was doing my full-time job, had my family, all my animals, but doing my other job at weekends and evenings, I then got to the stage where I built up enough of clientele, I just bit the bullet and gave up my other job. And
That's awesome.
And I've still changed a lot since then, because now I'm doing much less of the holistic consulting. I'm writing more training courses, although actually the last 2 years, the sort of video side of things has taken off a lot. And the reason you ask about the Roots, I work with companies like Roots because I am the type of person that researches everything to the nth degree. So I will not recommend anything unless it's tried and tested by myself. I understand the company ethics, the production methods, the quality. And what I was finding, Liz, is just the level of contamination in our food, in our water, in our air, the amount of these that pets are giving. So I needed something that could work for all species. And this was brilliant because the humans could use it, but we could use it for the animals as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's just also commendable, the fact that, when something wasn't really working for you anymore, you just moved on to the next.
Yeah.
That's very much like, oh, I'm wearing the shirt, the divine feminine kind of nature is this like flow. It's like, I'm not sticking to this one thing. It's, I think it's definitely part of the matrix structure, this idea that we have to stick to one thing, because I'm very much the same. Like I would stay at a job for 2 years and, be like, I think my time is done here, and then move on. And yeah. Exactly like you were saying, it all ended up connecting together. Oh, sorry. You still there?
Yes, still there.
No, my husband called. But it all ended up working together. Help me. It all ended up working together so beautifully. Even I did ballroom dance training, teaching.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, before this. Before I started my clothing line. What do you want?
Yeah, love your clothing line. I'm modeling it here.
Yes, she is. She's been a great supporter of my clothing line. You and Bryce both. I've been so blessed by it. It's been amazing. But yeah, so anyways, even ballroom dance training has because there's sales involved in marketing involved in it. And it's really helped me with my t-shirt line. And that's what I really want to be doing, is designing and having my own business. But so I was going to ask you, so I know you're obviously a spiritual person. You talk to many spiritual people. So I wonder when that kind of came into full effect for you. A lot of us have kind of always felt weird as a child. So I was just kind of wondering if you had that kind of, growing up, you always felt kind of different, or, when did that really start for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's quite difficult for me to answer, really, because I don't really know. I mean, definitely as a child, I was always the different one, always the odd one out. I think I'm trying to sort of think. I always knew what, first of all, I never really felt that I was a child. It might sound weird, but I don't remember, when I think of my childhood, and there's lots that I can't remember, but I was never very childlike. I was almost like a mini adult. And I see that in my son as well. My son at the age of 2 was talking fluently, potty trained himself. He's always been like a little sage. Well, he's not, he's huge, he's 6'5", but so I was a bit like that as a child. I was always very aware of what was going on in the adult world, much more so. And it can be a blessing and it can be a curse, because in a lot of respect I could pick up on all the adult problems that normally as a child you wouldn't pick up on, and that was really quite difficult, because then you felt quite disempowered because I couldn't do anything about them. But I think on the spiritual side of things, I had a couple of early memories when I must have been about 6 or 7, where I've always known reincarnation was real, because I was getting memories about past lives. And I had one incident which was just really peculiar, where I had this dream, this reoccurring dream of being a girl on a bike and cycling on country lane with my elder sister, and us both been knocked off our bikes and killed. And then I saw that on the news.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And I couldn't really say it. I can remember saying something to my sisters at the time, and they just sort of laughed at me. And then unfortunately, again, I wasn't very old, probably about 8 or something. We had my cousin, unfortunately, died of a cot death. And we weren't close to the family at all. But I woke up in the morning, and I can remember saying to my elder sister, it's really weird. I dreamt about Richard last night, which was the baby. And she said, that's really weird. So did I. And then later on in the day, we got a call from the parents saying he died. And it was never really mentioned, sort of thing. So a lot of it was not really sort of mentioned, but I always had a connection with animals, and I always knew I could talk to animals, but I just thought everyone could. I couldn't understand where at the stable yard where people completely misunderstood their horses and things. And I was thinking, why? It's obvious what they're saying to you. Why are you ignoring it? But then the weird thing happens, my family, it really wasn't spoken about at all. But then as I got into adulthood, I found out, my dad never spoke to about, but a couple of times he said, oh, will you come and see a medium's doing a thing in a village hall? Will you come with me? And all my other sisters were laughing. I was like, yeah, definitely. But he wouldn't go and see one on his own. And it was only just before he died that he said he'd always wanted to train to be a shaman. And he'd done all these crystal healing courses that none of us, not even my mum, knew about. And I know when his father died, I distinctly remember him saying to his mother, who was alive at the time, that he'd gone to the grave and there was a ginger cat there, and he knew it was his dad. And the mother agreed. Yeah, so it was sort of mentioned in little bits, but never discussed openly.
Yeah.
So my dad obviously had all these interests and things, but was never in a place where he could openly discuss them.
Yeah, that's so cool though, that you're kind of like his, his lineage has very much passed on to you, and like that has, been kind of facilitated and open, that part of him that he couldn't share with anyone. Now you are sharing with the world. That's, that's so cool.
So I really wasn't aware until quite recently about calling it spiritual at all. I always knew that you could talk to the trees. I always knew that everyone could talk to the animals, but I did do some formal training just to sort of prove it to myself. So I was confident enough to do it with other people's. But it's not something that's ever been discussed in our family. But then when I was studying herbal medicine, I'd get all excited thinking I was really clever, and realised my grandmother knew it all, because her generation knew it all, and they knew what all the herbs were for, and they knew how to use them. And when they were short of food during the war, they would eat hawthorn and make nettle tea and nettle soup and things. So a lot of the things I thought I was being really clever with, she knew. She knew it all anyway.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
I think I totally get that, because there's things that I grew up with that I was like, people don't know this, people don't connect like this, like what? Like it was like so much of my world that I thought it was everyone else's. What?
That's what I think. as
Yeah.
well.
You've got opinion. But yeah, so I mean, so you said that you felt like you could talk to animals. Like, has that kind of grown and expanded since you've kind of opened yourself more up to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and my mum would sort of say, my mum always had an incredible gift with animals, but she'd never say that animals communicate. She was just like, well, I just understand what they need. So it's a lot of it is just semantics in terms of what you call something. So when I say I communicate with animals and fine, she sort of laughs about it, but she's been doing it all her life. She just calls it something different.
It's really funny when you get caught up on the like wording of things, because I mean, I've said it before on plenty of my videos. I'm like, we're all talking about the same thing. Like we really are. And getting so he's so dirty. Getting so caught up on the terminology is so detrimental to growing. Did you see the kitty cat?
This is Coco.
He loves kitty cats.
Everyone must love kitty cats. They're gorgeous. Yeah, it is interesting. So if I would never I'd never until probably this year call myself a spiritual person, because I had a little bit of a different understanding of it. And you know, even like astrology, I've never trained in astrology and things like this. I find them interesting as bits of the jigsaw puzzle, but I don't let them dictate my life, if that makes sense. So when I then started getting into, like, you know, I got really into meditation, and I realized my dad had been doing it all his life. He just hadn't made a song or dance about it. And he took them when he was really ill, and I was taking him to his hospital appointments before he died in 2020 at the start of all this. And I was just going off to a meditation retreat in California. And he was like, why can't you just go and do that in the woods where you are? And I was like, good point. You know, it's like my generation has been like, you've almost got to make a song or dance about it, whilst his generation just did it. You know, like my nan always said she loved gardening. So she lived into her 90s and she was still doing her own garden well into her 90s. And she said, you know, when she put her hands in the soil, she just felt all her problems disappear and everything was okay. And now we call it grounding and connecting and earthing. But this was part and parcel of their lives. They just didn't feel the need to define themselves by it, I think, if that makes sense.
They just connected as we should be connecting. You don't have to label it. You don't have to call it. You know, that's one reason religion has been so divisive, is because it's created this, you have to have a name for everything. You have to, and if it's not the same name as what I'm talking about, it's wrong. It's like, no.
And that's probably, Liz, why I've never got in any conversations about it, because I didn't know a lot of the names for it. And then now what's been so gorgeous is connecting with people like you and Bryce and Medina and David and all the people we all connect with. It's just been so wonderful, because it's almost like people don't care. They don't care if you get the name wrong. They don't care if you haven't got the same explanation. But it's just so wonderful that we can talk about all this stuff now really openly, and just, you know, not get so hung up on it being the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it. You know, it's just fantastic. But I think, you know, I was very lucky. I know lots of people speak about this, but about growing up in a time where you were naturally very connected. Because of my generation, you know, you did all walk or get the bus or cycle everywhere or go on a horse or whatever. And, you know, we didn't have mobile phones, so we had to connect with what was around us and have proper conversations with people. And also, you know, the only way you could arrange to meet your friends is you saw them at school on a Friday afternoon and you'd say, I'd meet you at the cinema at 5 o'clock on Sunday, and you had to be there because you didn't have a way of contacting them.
Right. Yeah. I remember I briefly grew up in those days.
Did you? Yeah.
We had, you know, I was still in the era of passing notes in class, you know, to talk to your friends. Just barely, though. I think by 7th grade, most of my friends had cell phones. Yeah. I didn't. I wasn't allowed to have one until I paid for it myself. So that was good on my mom. But yeah, it's, it's one of those things that I think we all need just to get back to connection. I mean, I listened to this spiritual teacher recently, and she talks about how the main core need of every human is connection. And if you're doing something that is hindering the connection, those two parts of you are going to start fighting, and then you won't be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish, because your inner want is connection at all times. And that's what, we're needy beings. We need each other, and we need to connect to each other, and we need everybody's part of the puzzle, which I find it, so cool that this community we've created online has kind of allowed that, because all these people that we would have never met in person, connecting to each other, talking on the same or similar levels. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely created a home for me in a sense, because I always grew up feeling like I was so strange.
Yeah, me too.
And I totally understand what you mean about never feeling like a child. Which I think that goes into the whole old soul thing. Yeah. Which, as you said before, it just means we've been here a billion times.
I know, it makes me laugh. People always used to say it's great to be an old soul, and now I'm thinking I'm obviously a bit slow on the uptake and learning the lessons, because I have to keep coming back. But yeah, it is funny when you look at it, and I could see that straight away in my children as well, in terms of like, it was, bizarre, like they go to school and everything was learning through play, and I had children that want to just sit down, get it done, and then go off and do it. It was comical to watch. And to see how that sort of played out. And they're so different, my children, as well. It's brilliant. They're both very, very, they've got a lot in common, but they're very individual as well. Yeah. But I love the fact that the community that has grown up, because quite frankly, most of my friends around here, I've got very few that are on the same wavelength as me. And that can be quite isolating, and I did feel quite isolated for a while, and I did feel that I had to sort of change myself to fit in, but I was never quite prepared to. So there was always that internal conflict.
Yeah, my sister is actually close to you. We discovered, because I was over in Fleet for the month of December, and that was before I met you officially. Yeah. But she's over there with her 2 boys and her husband. She's got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. But yeah, they're very much feeling the same thing. They're like, I don't know who around me is like, because my sister is very awake. Yeah. But her husband is on some levels, but not completely.
Same with mine. Mine's not at all. I mean, he is on things like this, but doesn't believe the nefarious reasons behind it. Just doesn't believe in it. My husband's kind of the same way. He slowly, like, we actually had the discussion last night about what they do with our birth certificates, and he was like, what? I was like, yeah. He's like, why didn't you tell me? I was like, all right, I didn't think you were ready to know. Because my husband would not even go there with that one. I'm struggling enough with the whole Russia-Ukraine situation at the moment. Well, he brought it up because he was talking about, I forgot what he was talking about, but something about, basically being, I don't know if YouTube likes the word SLAVEs, to the system. And I was like, yeah, it's because of what happens when you're born and your birth certificate. And he was like, what? He's like, it's so funny because he is shocked by the amount of things that I know, because I don't just openly talk about it unless he brings it up. He's like, how do you know so many things? I know a lot of things because I look into them. I really do. That's what I do on my phone half the time. I'm looking into things. But yeah, it's it's one of those things, like, people with this awakening feel like they can't connect to people anymore. But I mean, I think that's like, in a sense, it's a little bit of a cop-out, because you can connect to anybody on any level. You really can. Exactly. Just be a human. You can connect to them on a human level, if anything, like talking about the weather. Oh my goodness, there he is calling again. It's telepathic. I agree. And it's been something I've struggled with. And I've had so many people sort of saying, oh, how can you be, say, with your husband? I mean, we've been together since we were 18. But we both talk to the trees. He talks to the trees all the time.
Oh, cool.
He's brilliant with the animals. He's really connected with nature. And the interesting thing is, I've said this to people before, it's like they say opposites attract, because he's so laid back, he's horizontal. I'm really not laid back at all, although getting better in my old age. Sorry, my cat's knocking everything off. But you can't just surround yourself by people that are the same as you. So it's wonderful that I can explore this.
Yeah.
But equally, he's never had a call up for this. He's never had any hassle about this. He's never had any hassle about anything, because he just doesn't engage in any of that drama. And therefore, the whole pandemic, he's been going to work throughout it. He's been going up to London to do this. He's never had any hassle. So I equally think it's quite a lesson in terms of the law of attraction. It's like, there's this fine line about educating yourself about what's going on so you can make the best decisions. Like for me, for my children, my daughter went to university in America, so I had to get her out of all these, and she worked with really hard on that. But equally, there's also the other side of the thing. So sort of saying, if you don't put your focus on the problems, do they actually come into your reality? And he's a very good example of no.
Exactly. So
I don't think it's as clear cut as most people make out. You know, does he need to know about all this?
Right.
He's the happiest person I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
So does he need to? I think we've all got different roles in this life.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't all try and do all of it, is what I'm coming to the conclusion of. You know, you need different personalities. You need the people that are going to speak up. You need the people that are going to really dredge out what has been happened. You need the healers. You need the people that don't focus on any of it and get on with life. You know, you need every bit of that jigsaw puzzle.
Right. Balance. Yeah. My husband is absolutely the same way. Like, he went to work through the whole thing because he was a necessary worker. And, you know, the same thing about going into any stores or anything. He never wore anything like that. Like, he's very much on the same page with that. And nothing's affected him, like nothing at all. And I'm just like, well, there you go. Like, he knows a lot more. He's a lot more spiritually in tuned. And I think that's just from being from Africa.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, because witchcraft is blatant over there. It's right in your face. And in the Western world, it's very much more so of a mental game. And we had that conversation when he came over here and we got married. I was like, you have to understand, this is a mental WAR. This is you know, it's mental witchcraft, if anything. But you know, he's used to the blatant in your face kind. So it was like a weird kind of adjustment that I never expected he would have to go through. But at the same time, like with everything that's gone on in the world, he's had so much what I would call like favor. Like, he's had favor with people, you know, because he's African, so he's dark, and he's never, even on that with the race, he's never had any issues with that, like nothing, because he's not looking for it.
I think it's brilliant, isn't it? And I must say, it's taken me a lot longer than it has you to realize all this, to realize that we are all meant to be different, and you need all the different, and there is no one solution. Because if everyone was like saying about the atrocities and everything, well, is that really putting the energy out there? But then some people have to do that because you have to shine the light on the dark. So but it's not for everyone, and it doesn't need to be. And even though last night was very frustrating, because I was like, oh, come on, watch this with me, and he was like, no. But then I thought, actually, you know, I can see your point. Why do you want to go there? What difference is it, you know? So I can see it. It's been interesting. It's taken me a while, but you know, I can really see the benefits of everyone's different role in this life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I even commend you, because I don't know how old you are, but you're older than me. I know that.
Oh, yeah. I'm much older than you. Yeah.
I find people that are older than me have a hard time with that. So that's, you know, very commendable that your mind is still open, you know, to to the possibilities, because I feel like a lot of people that as they, as we get older, our mind just shuts down and it's like, I believe this and it's never going to change. So I think the key to staying young is keeping that mind open and keeping your view open to possibilities and different ways of thinking and, all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
I agree. And stress shuts down people's minds a lot. I think stress, and because I'm naturally a very stressy person, as my family will tell you, but I've created a life that removes me from that. And
That's
so
awesome.
and I think, and that's been a conscious creation, and I've got better at it, and I've learned from my mistakes. And like, I had another business that I sold right at the start of the pandemic, and I'm just so relieved I did, because otherwise I wouldn't have been doing any of this, because I wouldn't have had time. So you do learn from your mistakes and keep it sort of open. But I think, I can see how stress of being in the mainstream life shuts people's minds off. And so I've been lucky that I've created a life that removes me from that.
Yeah, I'm sure just the nature of connecting with animals and being outside is super helpful. I mean, I know that we had a week last week of rain and cold weather, and we're not like England here, so we don't go out in the rain very much. And so it was taking a toll on me physically. I could feel it, and I was getting stressed about everything. And then now we've got beautiful sunny weather again, and I'm like okay, I can breathe again. I can go outside and just connect with the earth again. But yeah, so just to end on kind of a fun little note, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
Oh, good one. Okay, I think my first wish would be that everyone just suddenly wakes up tomorrow and they can actually hear, in a way that makes sense to most people, the voices of the animals and nature. And the reason for that is, I think then we'd really realize how connected we all are. And then so many of the struggles would go away, because even when we talk about the good for humankind and everything, but it's no good. You can't just take humankind without the rest of the world and the animal and plant kingdom. So I think if most people want to hear the voices, hear a conversation that we're like to humans. So I think, so the first one would be that everyone could suddenly wake up and hear the voices of nature and the thing. And then suddenly the decisions become obvious, what you should do. The second one would be, I'm having a bit of fun with this, but I can't resist. I want the EBS because
we all do.
All my friends, and this is completely from my ego, and I put my hand up, it kicks in a lot, but my family and my friends, I've been ridiculed. I've had the most awful things said to me and everything. And I just want to sort of say, Mama, told you so. And now I'll be very nice once I've had my told you so thing, but I would like it. So if I'm allowed an ego one, it's definitely that. And the third one would be the realization that, so everyone's talking about med beds at the moment in our community and things. I don't think the med beds, personally, I don't focus on that, because I know we can all heal ourselves. So I wish that there would be an awareness where, as part of this awakening program, quickly, that people realize that their subconscious mind can do so much more than they ever thought. Because again, then so many of our problems that we perceive as humans would go away, because I think the medical system, it just makes me want to cry at the moment. And I know some people are in it, and I've got loads of my friends who are in the pharmaceutical industry, and they 100% believe that what they're doing is for the great of humankind. They're doing it for the right reasons. But when you know what we know about the healing modalities that are out there, I'd like them to come out quickly.
Yeah, those are all really good. I like the EBS one.
Yeah,
I would love that too.
One. I have to be honest. I want
that.
Yeah.
We're all at that stage. We're just like, I just want to say I told you so, but I don't at the same time, because But yeah, those are great. Especially the MedBed one. I tried to kind of start to ease into that on my channel of just like, you can do it yourself. You don't have to wait for any external thing, you know, it's all inside of you, everything that you ever would need. Well, thank you so much. This has been great, even though my
That's fun. I want to invite you on mine if I can as well. If you can get that fit in, I'd love to have you on mine. And I really hope I'll share the link on my community tab, everyone. So anyone who's watching this on my things that we're sharing, please do subscribe to Liz, because you are getting some brilliant content out there. Thank you. Personally, your shop, I'm not just saying this, is it Passion or Passions? I can't remember. I'll put the link.
It's just Passion.
Singular.
Yeah.
I will put the link below, because for me, when I'm wearing something, it reminds me every time. Like now, I don't look in the mirror a lot because my hair's normally a mess, but when I'm looking at myself on screen, and when you're wearing something that embodies what you want to say, it's like wearing your affirmations, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So I just think it's just so wonderful. I love your shop. I love what you're doing. My husband's got one of your t-shirts and he absolutely loves it. So thank you for all you're doing and being such an inspiration. For you're the type of mum that I could have learned a lot from when I have my children.
Well, thank you. Well, this has been great. I loved hearing more about your story, and I'm sure the viewers will also, because I'm sure most of my viewers are your viewers. So, but yeah.
One big happy family.
Yep. Have a fantastic day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thanks.